Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here in North Carolina. If you missed past episodes, please be sure to take time to watch the first episode and watch the rest like a documentary. We are people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing and promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you. We are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We have moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Please be kind and self-governed. And if you have any questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I'm joined on air with Greg Clarkson, our regenerative farmer and ASN on Kansas. And now I'm proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
I don't know what.
You're here. You got there. You go. You got it back.
I'm having all kinds. I feel like they changed the buttons on all of these different things that we use. These systems get updated, and I guess there's some new.
Like a store. When you go into a store, they change the end caps, so they force you to walk around and browse and buy stuff you don't want. Same thing.
Something's going on here. Well, Anna, how are you doing?
I am just fine as frogs here.
Frog hair.
Fine.
Pretty
I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning, going nonstop.
Woo!
I've been monitoring my phone rather closely because we have some big deals going down, and we have to stay right on it and make sure the signatures and pieces of paper get shuffled around promptly. Mm-hmm. So if I have to, butt out for a minute here or there or take a call, you're forewarned. But it's all for the best, and it's all my real job. Everybody try to kind of keep in mind that this isn't my real job. My real job is out there doing other stuff. But anyway.
Hey, right. This is all on the job podcast, friends. We got folks that make these comments like, why are there dings and donks going on? That's because we're working. We're the doers here, and we're all doing the things. And so it's not like we just have taken a break to do the podcast. It's like we're still doing all the things. Anna, so Greg is in charge of topic today. So he
okay. Yeah, I was just I've questions about the various banking accounts, and I am by no means an expert, but I have set up the various accounts, and I just thought I would kind of walk through my experience and what I've done. And then maybe that'll just pop off the theme of banking, which is critical to farmers and small business owners. So what I did was I first set up my Prosperity account, with corrected status and everything and all the proper documents. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing that I did was set up I'm not saying it has to be in this order, but I set up a vendor account, which would be tied to my farm. The one thing I will say there is it's important that the email you use for the Prosperity account be different than the email you use for the vendor account. They're separate accounts, but they're both in the Prosperity system. Right. And then the third thing I set up was the trust account, or also called the safety vault. Now that one there, I use the same email as my personal Prosperity. Because it is a separate account. And then what I've since done is I've taken advantage of the Operation Safe Haven, and I've done 4 different transfers now, all successful, where I take FRNs from my existing bank, wire them into, and there's instructions. It's actually a Citibank account for global. And then they put those into the trust account, and they're USD once they hit the trust account. And then some magic happens. I don't know what happens. Magic happens behind the scenes, and all of a sudden, and it's a little bit surprising, because all of a sudden your trust account goes to 0. And I thought, okay, I'm not sure what happened here, but then magically the Prosperity account has however many FRNs you put into the trust account, you're credited with that amount of AFD in your Prosperity account, and a 1-for-1 exchange. And last I checked, that's around a little over 300 ferns per AFD because the dollar's dropping right now, as we can see. So that's kind of my experience. I've got a lot of links here. I've got the link trees, and I went through all my links to make sure I could find that. And Niti, I can share that over if you want to put it up on the chat or whatever. But I've just heard a lot of people asking questions about it. And, knock on wood, I've had just really great success getting it all set up. So just kind of kickstart the banking topic for today, I guess.
Right. I mean, and along with that, folks are worried that if their state isn't ready to host the banks, then they won't get access to their GFG. And Anna, I thought you could clarify that piece of it as well.
Well, okay. Part of the reason we set up Global the way we did was to prevent that problem.
Yep.
Right.
So that people have a safety net. GFG was conceived as a safety net for people that would need a means to exchange and ways to buy food and pay bills, even when the Federal Reserve System guttered out and down, and when the IMF system went TU, we would still have our own system, and we'd still be able to trade with other people all over the world. We'd still be able to, order goods from corporations, and we'd still be on our own little flat feet, no matter what, okay? Because we could see this coming. We could see this sort of juggernaut, explosive denouement where there would be a total, complete financial collapse. And we said, hell no, we're not going to let anybody go through that. That's not necessary. And we got our tails in a knot and started back in 2007 with the big short on Wall Street. It was obvious that the system was rotten. It was obvious that it was rigged. It was obvious that the collateralized bundled mortgage packages were worth the paper they were written on, and all these other things were coming to light. So we didn't, we knew that we were going to need an entirely different system. We knew that the Rockefellers had rigged the SWIFT system just like they rigged the pipeline system, the oil pipeline system. And and so way back in 2007, when the first big warning shot was fired, and we got a good look at the fallout from the TARP bailout and all the other things that were going on, it really lit a fire under our tail to develop a banking system that would work. And initially, I think Hunter was just thinking in terms of America. He was thinking in terms of our own country and our own history and the need for banking services that we would endure when the Federal Reserve note was outlawed or taken out of the circulation or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so he was working, and he was setting things up so that it would be, thank you.
Nice. That's nice. You got to take a sip. You've got to just enjoy it.
It's wonderful having devoted, loyal staff members who know what you need without having to say so.
Lovely.
They just show up. They hand you a cup of coffee. They show up and they hand you a smoothie. Mm-hmm. They kind of take track of grandma because grandma doesn't take track of herself, right? And so they make sure that I eat, and they make sure that I drink, and they make sure that I get potty breaks. And, they basically monitor me as if I were a small child. But I appreciate that because it's hard when you're working hours like this on things like this. You just get sucked dry by it otherwise. So I have my caretakers.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway, it's very important. We appreciate that they do that. Thank you for taking such good care of grandma.
They do. So at first, Hunter was just looking at, okay, how is the world banking structure set up now? How does it work? And he was coming at it as a systems analyst.
Mm.
And so the very first thing that was noticeable is that there were all these maritime commercial banks all over, and very few trade banks. Why? Okay. Well, then it goes back to the fact that the international trade banks are the ones that deal with gold and silver. And since
Right.
gold and silver wasn't being used in the wider population to make day-to-day purchases, it had largely become an area where you were just talking about transfers of gold and silver assets that were being used as collateral for the credit side of things. And so you had very few bullion banks, and you had few transactions, and those transactions tended to be between governments instead
Mhm.
of between businesses or people. So um, that's the very first thing, is that there were probably, 200 maritime commercial banks for every one international trade bank, which seemed to be very, very lopsided and wrong. Okay. So that's the
Right.
very first thing that popped up. And if you looked at this in terms of a global representation, you'd see the globe more or less dotted and covered with all these blue dots, or all
Mm.
red dots. The commercial maritime banks were all in red, and there were thousands of them. And then you'd see this little lonely blue bullion bank, you know, here and there. And um, so that was the first thing that really jumped out, was that there was this imbalance in the banking system, and it was caused because actual assets weren't being traded, and they weren't
Right.
being transferred. And the next thing that really came forward was that the actual assets that were producing all this credit that was being traded um, were off ledger. So these banks were holding land, and they were holding cash assets, and they were holding gold, silver, artifacts, jewels, anything of actual material value, and it was all off ledger. It wasn't being monitored. It wasn't being taxed. It wasn't being um, accounted for to the public or to the depositors, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It was just kind of taken off ledger by all the banks all at the same time, and just sort of sitting there being managed in secret.
Hmm.
May
All
I
right.
ask you something about that, Anna?
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit off of that, but what you're saying to me right now is like, the way that they're holding the art, they're holding all the things that they're just not counting. I just think about people that I know that are putting away, all their armory stuff. They're putting up liquor. They're putting up all this, this is all their savings, their wealth, they're storing, right? All these varieties of things, art. Isn't that also what these people, these sickos do with the prison system? Isn't the prison just a vault for the people that they're storing, that they've bonded?
Impounded. They've impounded them.
Impounded their vessels. They've impounded their vessels.
Hmm.
Well, that's part of it, but it's really much larger than that. And they have
Wow.
all of these computer screen systems of different colors. You've got the black screen, the gray screen, the blue screen, the green screen, that are tracking all these assets in real time.
Mm.
What they had developed was a trading system. And this is all growing out of the fact that the government can only trade on our credit. So the government was maximizing the availability of credit.
Yeah.
Okay, that was their goal. and they were using our assets to do that. But they couldn't really lawfully or legally use our assets in a way that would damage our assets, because this entire time, we've been missing, lost at sea. They're liable to return those assets unharmed. You see,
Their usufructory duty.
they have to return our assets unharmed. So they couldn't be risking our assets, putting our assets at risk in order to generate all this credit.
I mean,
So
I
what
would say that they have harmed us and they have risked us. And we've been working and doing all the things that we didn't want to do. And I think that there has been great harm done.
Well, of course there has, but from their standpoint as usufructs, their obligation is to return our asset unharmed when we demand it.
And not until then.
Well, damn it.
Here we are. Anyway,
how much louder do we have to bang the cup on the floor, Anna?
Let me explain what's been going on since the 70s. The last 50 years, basically. They developed this system of trading platforms. And what they would do is they would take a large clump of actual assets, say $100 billion in gold. And they would agree that they were going to block this asset so that it couldn't be moved or traded for a period of 10 years. Okay? That results in a medium-term note. And there are only 2 companies in the world that issue medium-term notes. But this is the product, the financial product that all the banks want. Okay, so they have this asset that is sitting in, say, a bank in Spain that has, the 100 billion worth of gold just sitting in a vault. And they basically put a mark over that and say, it's blocked from this date to this date. And all it's going to do is sit there in the vault, not move an inch. Nothing's going to happen to it. It's going to be perfectly safe. But using the magic, and boy, it is magic, of the fractional reserve system, we're going to issue 10 times that amount as credit.
Yep.
So now instead of 100 billion, we're going to issue 1 trillion in credit. Okay? Okay, so this maximizes the amount of credit that is available then to the government or to the other investor or the, whatever company or entity it is that has this 100 billion of gold sitting there. And what should happen is that the entity that's placing this, that is making this agreement and blocking this asset for a period of 10 years, should immediately get an equivalent amount as credit.
Yep.
Right off the top. Boom. They should get 100 billion in credit. All right. Now this leaves what? 900 billion to play with? Okay.
Yep.
So the guy that's operating the trading platform that's allowing this whole transaction to happen gets a cut for his services. Say he takes 10%. So he gets 100 billion in credit. All right. And then you have the banks, and suddenly they have $800 billion in credit. The government comes in and takes its cut. So they take half of it, 400 billion. And the banks have 400 billion to loan out at interest in order to make profit for the bank and to get things moving in the economy at large, right? And so this is how they work it. The big problem for them, and this is what I keep sticking to them, is that, okay, if that asset belongs to me, that's blocked, then I not only own the asset, I own the credit being generated from that asset, all of it. And you don't have an agreement with me about how you're going to divvy up my credit. Okay, this is the sticking point. This is where their whole scheme just goes south. And we are the owners of all that gold. Because they took our United States gold offshore for quote unquote safekeeping. And it has remained offshore all these years. And they took our private gold as trust gold that was, commandeered, supposedly because we were dependents of the Queen. Then all of our gold assets and holdings were commandeered and managed by the British. And they're under the same obligation to return our assets unharmed. They just don't want to admit the fact that our credit is part of our assets.
Yeah.
And so they also did some creative bookkeeping, and they created 2 ledgers and 2 account systems. One that this pertains only to the credit. Remember, the gold is sitting there in a vault, and it isn't going to even be looked at for 10 years, right? It's just blocked as if it doesn't exist for 10 years. So we're not talking about gold anymore. We're now talking about the credit that they issued based on the blocked asset. And the 10-year period gives them time to recoup enough so that they don't have to worry about producing the credit and the asset at the end of the day. Okay, so they have 2 ledgers going. They have the AutoTrist ledger and they have the CUSIP ledger. And the CUSIP ledger contains all the debt, and the AutoTrist ledger contains all of the credit plus the profit being realized from the other things that are going on over here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, isn't that nice? And they keep them completely separate. Even the people who are working on these systems don't know about the existence of the others.
Huh. Now, how does the beast tie into this?
Yeah.
Because
everything's compartmentalized. So they keep it all compartmentalized. And so the beast is tracking it all supposedly, right? Or no?
Is it just an asset tracking system?
Yeah.
Beast is primarily started out as a land tracking asset.
Land.
Oh.
The Beast was set up to keep track of who owned land and who didn't.
Okay.
And it went from there to, including other assets. And about 50 years ago, well, maybe 75 years ago, right about the time of the Second World War, they set up what was called a master account system. And the master accounts were set up on a very simple but effective numerical accounting system where you could identify the nature of an asset by the number code assigned to it. So, for example, code 333 is all land.
Okay.
And code 555 is all cash. And, each thing had its own designator in these master account systems. And they set up all of the assets that were being blocked and traded. All of that stuff was cashiered into this off-ledger system that you never saw. Yep. The banks had it on a gray screen or a black screen, whatever, according to what asset it was. But they're sitting there mum, not saying a word to anybody that they have all this stuff cashiered and they're using it as the basis of the credit that they're spinning off. And they're certainly not telling us about our share of the credit, right?
Right.
So is this Doge, whatever Doji, whatever they're working on, all this stuff that they're auditing, are they never going to reveal all of this part of it because there's so much here? I mean,
Oh, hell, they're never even going to reveal the fact that they're settling the bankruptcy.
That's right.
I know, you're right.
Well,
Like, what do
yeah.
these people think is going on? I'm talking to people around here. We're explaining it. I'm like, well, what do you think is going on? You hear this because, of course, Anna, they're all like, okay, well, here she goes. Niti's talking about all this crazy talk again, and I'm like, well, are you listening to what they're doing? Are you listening to the auditing? Are you listening to the departments shutting down? What do you think is exactly going on here? And then when you start talking to them about the bankruptcy, all of a sudden, I will say that instead of them rolling their eyes and walking away like they used to do, now they're like, oh crap, maybe that's what is going on. Like they're starting to go, wait a minute, what? And then you go, well, do you know anything about bankruptcy? Do you? You know?
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, and I go, you might want to look that up because then you can follow along with what's happening and then it's not as shocking, and
It's not scary.
I said, it's not scary when you know what's going on. And look, hey, if you're approaching the edge of a cliff and you don't know you're approaching the edge of the cliff, but you feel the vibration of danger coming closer, but you don't know why, then it's nice to know there's a cliff coming up.
It's really interesting to think, in their system, in the Federal Reserve note system, how many, basically it's shrinking money supply. I'll use the term money because that's what they call it. Like the M2, M3 supply is shrinking like mad right now because of this. And that's the precursor to the implosion. That's what you call deflation. That the most scarce thing in 1932 was a dollar, right? The money supply eroded and you have deflation. And now that's their system. And I'm good with that. I want that system to go away, particularly because you started a new system for us. But we're right on the cusp of that. I mean, it's one of those things. Once the ball starts to roll, it's gonna become a huge snowball as it's going down the mountain.
Anna, right. Can you speak about the trading that's getting ready to start, like with the St. Crown or whatever about the AFD and even you're saying even GFG, I guess, is getting ready to start trading the AFD. Is there some due diligence period that's required in releasing a new currency like that? Because I think that there's a lot of confusion about, hey, well, when is all this going to start happening? And and I'm sure there's a process. Everything that you've done so far, I mean, no one is comprehending the gravity of all the nuances of creating a brand new currency, launching it out into the world, getting it to be received by other people, and for having them be willing to trade for it. Can you just speak on that a little bit?
No, actually, it's a lot simpler than you might think.
Okay.
Because gold is gold.
Yep.
And gold has always been international currency.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in international jurisdiction, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, a tenth of an ounce of gold is a tenth of an ounce of gold, and it has a value in the world market. So, if you just define your currency as a tenth of an ounce of gold is your basic unit, then as long as you've got gold, nobody cares. It's
gold is gold.
Well, it's basically the AFD is really a certificate, right? Like a coat check to go collect the gold on a blockchain ledger, so that everything's immutable on this blockchain to keep the ledger pure. And now everybody knows, and it goes back to, I don't want to carry a bunch of gold to buy the tractor. That's not practical.
Right.
So,
but the bills, I think, actually have a gold in them, right? Isn't that what we read?
They're called ad valorem bills.
Yeah.
And they actually contain gold.
Yeah, that's like a thread of gold.
So, it's true cash as opposed to symbolic cash.
Right.
It's not a graven image, okay?
Right.
Even though
This
it's
is
pretty, and even though you can fold it, and even though you can put it in a billfold,
right.
it has value in and of itself. Okay.
So
Right.
it can be used for consideration in a transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the gold backs are. This actually has a thread of gold in it.
Right.
That's neat. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And then the gold back, but the gold online, what are they calling it? The Harmony coins. Is that what it is? The Harmony? Yeah, the Harmony coins. Um, people are trying to compare that to Bitcoin. And I'm like, no, this is gold.
Right. This actually has gold backing.
Right. I mean, you can consider it being moved around like Bitcoin, but it's actually gold.
Right. It's an asset-backed coin. It's an
Right.
actual, in a sense, it's an actual coin.
Correct.
And that
Correct.
it has actual gold value and content. It's not just
right. Okay. And then
very
also,
good.
and then I want to just make this really plain for these folks too, because they think you're waiting for permission to give us access. But
No.
there's
No.
actual gold, friends. There's gold that has been audited in the vault. And if you read the article that Anna wrote about that, then the St. Crown Exchange explains to you that there's $2 trillion worth of gold that's been audited. It's being held. Right, Anna?
Right. And we're just going as fast as we can. I mean, this is like the hamster wheel of all hamster wheels.
Right.
I was explaining the history of the development of the thing, and we started developing it in terms of banks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, developing a network of what we called blue dot banks, international trade banks, so that we could begin trading gold and silver and assets without involving these maritime banks.
Right,
You know,
because those are the legal and you guys have to they're not getting it, Anna, like the bilateral banking system. Like, we don't want to work with SWIFT. We don't want to work with BRICS. We are having our own banking system that's not based on their lies and immorality.
Well, and we don't want to be under the British system, period, at all.
Right.
We don't want any association that is, limited to that.
I don't think people know that. That's the problem. They just don't know, Anna. They don't know that that's where that's all coming from.
But there's also the ability. Oops. Go sorry.
The British basically monopolized a whole sector of the banking system. And so what we want and what we need as a country is bilateral, in that you can do actual assets and you can do credits.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where the bilateral comes in, that you can work both systems. And we want it under our law. We want it under our commercial maritime law. We want it under our admiralty law. We want it under our land jurisdiction. We don't want to fuss fart around with the British system because it's crooked. And so we want something that isn't going to collapse because it's fraudulent. Okay? They've been running a fraudulent construct since the 1930s, at least the 1930s. And so what happens when you have fraud? Poof.
Yep.
Everything that has been tainted by the fraud has to go away.
Yeah.
It has to get blown back to the Stone Age, as Karen Hoods put it, in order to get rid of the fraud. Okay, so we don't want our system to be attached to that system. I mean, it would be like attaching your brand new boat to an old wreck that's in the process of sinking.
Yeah.
So we wanted our own standing system, our own completely new system under our law, under our jurisdiction, without any taint, without any of the funk coming off of that British system. And at the appropriate moment, we wanted to be standing there with our axe ready to chop off any lines that were attaching our boat to theirs, because it's going to go down. Nobody can save it, right? So we built our own system, apart from BRICS, apart from SWIFT, apart from the IMF, apart from the World Bank, all of that. We just started new and looked at it. And the whole game here is to provide the world with a way to trade both credit and asset-backed money, and do it honestly, swiftly, simply, so that without a whole lot of surveillance crap, without a whole bunch of interference, transfer bottleneck systems, and all that. We just wanted to be free of that. And we wanted the people of the planet to be free of that, so that the living people could function with a system that is simple, transparent, easy to understand, easy to use, doesn't involve a lot of rocket science. And so giving them that safe, secure, clean safety net system to be able to transact both in international trade and use gold and silver, or be able to use your own land and your own sea jurisdiction commercial system and law to transact in commerce. So that we set up the bilateral bank system that way, and we were in the process of developing national, international banks bilaterally in other countries. We were going to Italy, we were going to Ireland, we were going to Germany, and we were educating people about the whole situation and helping them set up their own bilateral banking system for their country, so that over time you'll see these pairs of banks in every country, and everybody will have their own national bank, and everybody will have their own international bank. All right. So everybody will have a commercial, they'll have two commercial banks, and they'll have an international trade bank. Okay, so we were setting up on this kind of global scale, country by country, and then we would have bank treaties that would connect the banks and determine, the relationship and intent and everything of the banks. And we'd be able to trade, say, with the National Bank of France, or we'd be able to trade with France commercially and be able to transfer whatever needed to be transferred for the conduct of the governments, and whatever was needed for the conduct of trade and commerce represented by our countries, right? So we're up here at this level working away, and all of a sudden one day Jim turned to me, I looked at Jim, he said, "It's going to take too long." And he was absolutely right. It was obvious that it was going to take too long to go that route. And we wouldn't be able to set up the safety net for individual people and families. It was a real hard choice, because so much momentum was invested in developing the banks that turning around and recalibrating global to function at a retail level and to issue individual accounts and be able to service those accounts was just a mind-blowing change in midstream. But it was absolutely necessary because otherwise the people that were trying to benefit with all of this would have been standing there starving, and we wouldn't have had any way of getting help to them. You know, the whole goal was to help people. So all of a sudden, we had to go, just change everything. Now we're going to actually have to go all the way down to the retail level, in addition to building the international bank network. And poor global. Oofda. I mean, what a challenge. What an incredible challenge that they took. It's just kind of mind-boggling even now, years later, to contemplate. You know, just the switch in mindset and mission, the expansion of the mission that took place at that juncture was immense. And then, so we're transitioning global into being a retail bank for the entire globe, for the entire world.
For all so the free people, so that we don't leave anybody behind.
So somebody in Zimbabwe with a cell phone can connect.
And, I mean, the fact that you're launching the trade in Africa, on Africa, that is a big, big deal. Can you speak a little bit about that for everybody?
Well, Africa's always been a real special concern of mine, and so has India. And so I having a system that's global and that can reach down to the retail level and that can operate under its own international law and its own global law is very important. But the reason that the Federal Reserve note was the reserve currency is that it's the only currency that has an exchange rate into the gold and silver system.
It was the only pathway.
We're the only ones that could do that connect. Okay?
Yeah.
So realizing that, we knew that we had to extend it as a global system so that people were not starving in Australia and Africa and Europe and Asia in general. And, you know, so at the same time that we're realizing that, oh, this isn't just a matter of building and connecting banks in different countries. This is a business of getting down to the retail level and being able to connect people all over the world with a safety net. Okay, so it was a mind-boggling process. It was just, for a while there, it just seemed like every day I was being socked in the gut, socked in the nose, and then given a good back chop, you know. You're going to do what? And so,
I mean, it is a big deal, Anna. I mean, the like, it's very emotional because even in the time I was, you know what I've been doing recently, Anna? I've been listening to the first 10 episodes that me and you recorded. And I'm like, this poor lady has been telling me the same doggone thing since the first 10 episodes. And I'm watching the change in myself. Okay. And so I'm listening to it for myself. And you're still saying the same doggone thing. And I'm like, the patience of this saint is ridiculous. and so and we can't hear some things until we can hear them, and I know that you know that because you never stop. And at the very beginning, I don't know that you were really ready to hear all of us asking all of that stuff, because you could hear your frustration kind of in the beginning, and then you realized where we were, and then you were like, well, dang, because you've just been lost in your world up there doing all this big work, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm over here and they're still way over there. This is worse than I thought.
And Hunter was about over the mountain on the other side.
Right. I know, because like you and I would be texting back and forth, and you're like, God, if it's taking this long for you to get it, then when is everybody else ever going to get it? And because I'm asking you all these really hard questions, and I mean, and I'm not saying I'm some kind of genius by any stretch. No way. I mean, but I wasn't reading as much because my contribution when I first started this for my assembly was that I was just going to do the podcast, because I'm really busy with my work, and I just didn't think I had time to do anything else. I don't know what it is about you, Anna, and this work that we've gotten sucked into, but I can't get away from it. And it's like, I want to quit all the time. Like you say, like you were getting gut punched and beaten in the back of the head and whatever. And also, I can't just freaking walk away, because this is the solution for all my friends. I mean, look, I got Greg on here, and the men won't leave now. Now I drug the men in. So they're really like, oh, what have you done?
Did everybody hear that admission? Now I dragged the men in.
Oh, I did. Hey, I say it bold. Ask Gregory. I told him, haven't I said this, Greg? He's here. He hears me say this all the time. I said, it's time for the men to get involved, because we've taken it as far as we can, and we need the men, and the men have to stand. And so we have to call. And I've just been calling all the men. Where are the men? Where are the real ones? The real men, not the kind of, emotional basket case ones. We're talking about the real men. Where are they? And they're coming around. And when those guys get involved, it's a big thing. And when they're yelling at me going, oh, why can't I go? I'm like, well, make the path. Go. We're waiting for you. Blaze it. Like, we've been blazing it as long as we could, but we're stuck. Now we need the guys. The guys have to help push us the rest, like start blazing the fire, and then we're coming back through.
Well, once this trading goes live, with all this work you've put in with the bank and GFT and everybody, but once this goes live, it's going to be warp speed. And I don't mean the stupid warp speed from the political sense. I mean literally warp speed.
They won't be able to stop you at all. I mean, the minute St. Crown actually goes live, they say they're going live in October. So if that is going live on October, then I'm sorry, all of this is over. Whatever they're trying to do.
That's the only thing to have to hold us back.
Right.
The regulations and the statutes, we can get them out of our way. But the banking is in the way still, their system. And so that's the last thing they have holding us back from going on.
I mean, then they're going to have to talk about it. Then Trump can't ignore, or they can't not say something.
Right.
Okay, well, what's going to happen is our own exchange platform is opening. Okay?
When is that opening?
Like next week.
Really?
I mean, we're talking. We're not waiting till October, folks. We can't.
Anna, don't you play games with me, girl. Don't you play with me.
No. Well, we have everything all calibrated now, so that our currency AFD can trade directly with 184 other world currencies.
Next week.
Yeah.
We're at that point.
Next week.
We've already done let's say we've done the A beta test, where we test the asset back to the fiat. Now we've done the fiat to the asset back. Now we're just checking the connecting points, how that works.
Mhm.
And we've got an exchange platform of our own. We're not
Next week?
waiting for St. Crown.
Did you say next week?
Yeah.
Did you say next week?
Well, all I got to say is buckle up, Buttercup, because
Buckle
once
up,
that goes,
Buttercup. Well, Anna, we
We're
have the list.
talking days. We're not talking months. We're not talking,
Mhm.
we're not talking October. All
Okay.
right. St. Crown is St. Crown, and they're working as fast and as far and hard as they can for their people.
Mhm.
They have an exchange platform that is already established in the old system.
Mhm.
But that doesn't keep them from developing a new trade platform that will enable them to move the bilateral bank system and merge this. There's this, try to imagine you've got a brand new, beautiful passenger ship, and there's this old, decrepit, nasty wreck that is just barely staying afloat. And you come up and what do? You throw
Throw the
the
rope
life
over.
raft over, and you haul up the passengers and the crew off the old boat. And at a certain point, you cut the lines and you let it sink. You take all the anything valuable that you can salvage off of it, and you let it sink. Well, that's what's in the process of happening.
Mhm.
But the fact is that you have a new boat. You have a new passenger boat, a nice, brand new, clean, paid off passenger boat that you can climb onto and not worry when the rest of it goes away. When the rest of it sinks, it sinks. Okay? So, yeah, we're beginning to trade on the international trade market through St. Crown. But St. Crown's real function is to provide a safety net to the African nations and all the African people worldwide who are going to need a safety net. Okay? Same thing will happen for Europe. You'll have a European exchange. And then all of this stuff will get going bilaterally as we originally planned it, so that both systems can be engaged and both can talk to each other.
Yep.
And we can manage these accounts so that people can have access to both asset-backed money and credit.
Mhm.
And
So we would have access to our credit with that as well?
That's prepaid credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next
Because
week?
we won't be doing this.
Look,
this
I'm stuck on
stuff anymore.
I'm stuck on next week. I'm stuck on next week because
Well, you're tired of the
don't hold me to that exactly, but we're talking short time. We're not talking long time. We're not talking October.
right.
Okay?
Well, listen, Anna, we have your patent office ready. It is ready right now. The couple of glitches that we are working through, we're manually going to manage them until they're done, but we went ahead and just decided it's open. So I wanted you to know that today. I don't know when I can show it to you. You have to tell me when you have time for me to show it to you, but it's ready. And Greg, you needed to know that because we were just working out what the last, and the only thing that really is kind of glitching still is the auto generator for the paperwork. It's basically the formatting that's a pain in the butt because he's literally having to code in all the formatting. And if somebody's name's too long or something, then it just kind of throws it off or whatever. So he's fixing that part of it. But outside of that, it'll be fixed fairly quick. I mean, it's just little stupid stuff that they'll be able to do.
Well,
And then, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've gone through with the bank system, is that endless, ferreting out the bugs and the little piddly bit things that hang up.
Well, and it would be easier if we could just use a WordPress site, but we didn't. We own it. It's separate. It's ours. It's been 100% coded. It's on a blockchain. It is the hardware. Greg has it somewhere hidden somewhere. Y'all can go find it underground somewhere. And then if you want to, and then the redundancies are all in the cloud somewhere. So it is solid.
Yeah. Well, that's what we had to do with the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Build our own
Yep.
system, our own software, our own coding,
Everything.
our own
Yeah. So it
algorithms.
so it doesn't look like the aesthetic of, whatever, but it works really good.
That's all it has to do is work.
Yeah, exactly. You got to build the foundation before you put the roof on the house. So
Yeah. Anna, we're calling it the Bucolic Living Law is the site, Bucolic Living Law. Bucolic is the stewardship of land. And so we were just really impressed with the etymology of that particular word. So we hope that you like it. And it's living law, because, I'm sure we're going to have to keep morphing with the times. But people can publish there from all over the world. I know that I've already gotten messages from people that are on Africa. I've got messages from some people actually from Canada. They just want to put it on everywhere. And I think South Africa actually launched an LRO too, or they have their own.
All over the former British Empire. And I can't wait to really put a stake through its heart.
Uh-huh.
But they were closing the land recording offices and opening up land registration offices.
Oh.
So they were actually physically entrapping people so that they didn't have an option.
I was going to say, wait a minute, that's incorporated.
Right. So they were closing off our ability to even establish and record our claims in public.
Wow.
So
they were stopping us from doing it in the newspapers around here, just FYI.
Yeah, well, we just kind of blew past all that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We developed our own publishing services, and we developed our own recording services, and now they are having to deal with the fact that we did.
Right.
But Greg, did I actually answer your questions that we started out with? I feel like we got into this wonderful kind of.
No, I think you did. I mean, I was going from the more practical sense. You gave a wonderful history of where you started and where you're at now and where we're about to be. But I was just looking at it from the more practical sense. And as you were talking about the decrepit passenger ship here next to us on our nice shiny passenger ship, I think that's something critical that people need to realize is we're sitting on gold, literally, and it doesn't devalue. That Federal Reserve note has eroded 98.9%, 99.9% since 1913. Yeah. That's why that ship keeps going down. The price of gold isn't going up. It's the Federal Reserve note is going down. Gold's still staying right where it's supposed to be. And we want to be sitting here because I don't know if people are familiar with the Weimar Republic in Germany in the 30s. The erosion of the currency, or inflation is another term for it, goes exponential. Eggs are what? I don't know, $6, $7 a dozen, depending on where you're at, $12 a dozen. Think about them being $150 a dozen. Right. That will happen exponentially. And for us, with an asset-based thing, the beautiful thing is, if I have eggs here, we raise eggs here, and you want to buy some eggs, you just connect to my vendor. You just send me direct through our own system. We don't even have to touch the external banking system. You can pay me and I can ship you eggs. That's going to be so beautiful once we get there. So I'm just really looking at it from the practical standpoint of the day-to-day usage of it, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful what you put together.
Well, I think it's wonderful, and I think the people who have been working on this so long are amazing just
Yep.
amazing people. They have been inspired and prompted to create and provide a safety net for everybody, and to do it for free.
Yeah.
They're not even charging anybody access fees or account
Yeah.
fees or anything.
Mm-mm.
And so when I hear this absolutely insane gossip, criticizing them, or
Yeah.
suspicioning that they're trying to pull something, all this, it's just so.
They're pulling it onto themselves after they've volunteered for how long? I mean, it's absolute nonsense. And it's just the same thing that they say about you, Anna. Like, like she's just tricking everybody, and she's just been talking about all this stuff for years. And I'm just like, so what part do you not believe? You don't believe in courts? You don't believe in law? And what part did she make up? Because she can't even make up all this crap. Like,
I literally couldn't. In my worst dreams, I couldn't come up with all this.
I'm like, she's a damn great storyteller. And also, it's also, what I think is fantastic, Anna, is you have all this incredible language out there. And I've been converting it and using it in affidavits that I'm creating testimonies in the form of affidavits. And that stuff works. And listen, you don't know this about me, Anna, but I was trained in contract law in Philadelphia in my 20s. And I never knew why, because, I was a kid. I was in my 20s and I was in real estate, and I was working with these Italian guys. They were the best thing that ever happened to me, because they did things old world style, and they were the guys that were like, look, I was working as their multifamily housing director. And they were just launching their multifamily housing because they were in construction. They were building single family homes. They wanted to move into multifamily housing. And they said, we are not going to keep paying attorneys, Niti. So you have to learn all of whatever you need to know and I was literally creating the entire multifamily housing department set up for them. And so they gave me 3 days with attorneys one-on-one to establish, like I had already written whatever lease documents and all these other things. And then I went in with them for them to go over it, for us to iron it all out and for them to correct it or whatever and explain to me all the things. So I learned all the formatting, all the spaces. What does it mean? I mean, I get that it means different kind of jurisdiction and all this other stuff, but I didn't remember all of that anymore, because why would I ever use it? I don't use it like regularly day to day.
Right.
And then when I started looking at all your stuff, and then you started talking about parse syntax, it was kind of like I had this weird download from somewhere of like, oh, wait a minute, I heard all this stuff before from somebody. And I started reading all your stuff. Then it all starts coming back together again. Then you're just like talking about how you turn it, convert it into an affidavit. And then I was like, oh my God. And so as there are different situations come up in business and I start applying it, it works. That's how I know that you're not full of crap, because it works. And it just worked for me for all the 1,200 different things that I had to take care of. I don't talk about it with everybody all the time, but I mean, I am testing what you say. I am always looking into what it is that you say, and it always works. And if it didn't work, then I would know right away. So for all of the people that are out there hating and doubting, they don't also probably know anything about law, and they don't obviously know anything about how the courts work. And if they did, they would comprehend that it is literally a banking exchange. And our courts are our banks. So if you want your banks up, get your court up.
And there's also something to you got all of that from the law standpoint, but then like with the bank, starting something from scratch. 2001, I started my own business, however many years ago that's been. And Anna, where you were talking about, getting punched in the gut and all that, I went through all that. I designed it's a reactor protection system for commercial nuclear power plants. I designed a system from scratch. We did me and a few guys that I had on my team did it all from scratch. We didn't buy any code from anybody. We did it all from scratch. And there was a lot of challenging times through those 20 years, but every day I woke up, I knew it was the right thing to do. And, I think when you have that as a guiding and that's small scale compared to what you're doing, but I can appreciate what you've gone through. And you probably woke up at 5 a.m., as you said today, and there was no doubt in your mind, I'm full speed ahead, right?
Right. Well, and the parameters and the circumstances and even the parties that you're dealing with keep changing.
Yep.
Prior to the bankruptcy, it was one world. During the bankruptcy, it's another world. You're dealing with different parties, no longer dealing with the actual vendors. You're dealing with the bankruptcy trustees of the vendors. All this stuff keeps moving. I call it, they move the cheese, right? Everything in international sea jurisdiction is literally liquid. It goes up, it goes down there. It's just really difficult to deal with. And then when you're trying to adjust what you're doing to the needs of the situation,
Right.
and to do it quickly. I mean,
and you're dealing with the brigands.
yes.
And then they keep changing, they keep pulling the carpet out. They keep pulling the rug out every other day and putting in a new rug. And you're just like, but it is interesting to me that they do fall back on that ancient law so much. It's incredible how the criminals, whatever we want to say about them, at least you have that, to go by.
They have to have something in order to organize.
I mean, well, I just mean that they don't actually have honor, but they do somehow honor that. That is a code that they will maintain somehow.
Because they have to have some way to deal. Otherwise, they don't have any system either. You
got to stand on something. Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand why they do that, but we have had, in 4 years, we've probably done 20 years worth of work.
Yeah, I believe it. People have no idea what you're doing, how much it is, how fast it is. They think everything's so slow. It's not slow. It's like every time you turn around and you're doing this while somebody is kicking your ass the whole time. Someone is just beating you up the whole time, and you're having to deal with, and then you got crybabies everywhere, and you got all this other stupid nonsense happening all over the place. And the milk's falling out over here, and the power is falling over there, and then they're trying to destroy you with weather warfare over here, and they blizzard your house. I mean, good grief,
But every day you become more immovable. I would think you just become more solidified and more solidified and more solidified.
Fortification that's happening, it's fortified to death.
Well, maybe it's layers of scars, but still, it's fortification. Yeah.
Well, it's not how many times you get hit, it's how many times you get up.
That's right. Yep.
And, I wish it could be so easy and so beautifully organized and just roll out like, something on ball bearings, but it doesn't really work that way in real life. And
so none of this was built that way. I mean,
anything worth having is worth working hard for, right? Otherwise, it's not worth having.
Right.
Well, think of us going through the transition and the realization that we were going to have to use Global as a retail bank at the level of 8 billion people needing.
I think you wouldn't have even begun to do what you had to do if you knew that then. I think that you had to think that you were doing what you were doing. It was a trick, because if you weren't mind tricked into it, you wouldn't have gotten as far as you did. And then you're just like, fine. Okay.
I was going to say that. I think the path you described, not the desired path, but it's the logical path. To think up to the level you were thinking. And to think about having the various banks in the various countries and think through how all that interaction had to work. Had you not done that first,
right,
you probably wouldn't be nearly as far along as you are now. So, yeah.
I'll tell you the truth. There are a lot of days when I just kind of look up and say, "Okay, you got a great sense of humor."
Yeah.
Well, if you say so.
I mean, I honestly, but whenever we look back at the stuff that we've done, Anna, don't you say, yeah, I had to do that because I wouldn't have done this without that, and I wouldn't have done that without that. So
there's a logic. There's a logic to it all. It's just that switching from being at sort of a wholesale level of banking and then having to get down into the
trenches,
retail trenches and deal with individual accounts.
That's terrible. You're just like, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah, no.
Yeah, and doing that for 8 billion people, not just 320 million, but 8 billion people.
Right.
To stand ready to welcome them all home and get them organized on their own land and soil and help them repopulate.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few, just like there were very few international trade banks still operating. There were very few native, very few countries standing on the land and soil anymore.
I mean, the way that you described it, and like Iran, North Korea, the few Pacific Islanders. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The Brits very nearly pulled it off, and they would have. They would have.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't. They haven't been able to do it, and with God's grace, they'll never be able to do this, and never be able to get that kind of traction again. So,
wow. Well, this was the best hour. This was the most fun, and thank you, Anna. And I think it's great news. I'm not going to hold you to next week, but maybe the week after.
Definitely next week, but really, we're talking
April 15th. April 15th. I'm just kidding.
We're not waiting for October, folks. This baby is greased and ready to roll.
Anchors away, Anna. Anchors away.
My wife's birthday is in April, and my birthday's in October. So I'd rather have her a birthday present than waiting for me.
Well, as
or born on day. I shouldn't say birthday, right?
Born day. Her born day.
Born day. Yeah.
As Hunter says, as an old fighter pilot, ripcord.
Man. So we're just going to be waiting for the article called Ripcord, right? That's what's going to
happen. There you go. Yeah.
That's very good code word. I think so.
Man, when we see that article, you don't even have to say nothing. Just say Ripcord. We'll just be like, yes.
Well, we got all of our systems running and rolling and rocking, and we've got our paws are solidly on, all the gold and silver we need, and every day more comes to us, and more credit records come to us, and
nice.
We're enjoying the support of, I think, a grateful world. People that realize that what we are doing is it doesn't have any hidden agenda. It doesn't have any backlash. We're not pulling any cheap commercial tricks because we're not commercial. Okay?
Right.
And so these other yahoos over here who are trying to be so secretive and trying to pull off a big steal and we're not. We're real people. We're operating as real people. We're being self-responsible. We are using carriage accounting. We're not bunking around doing something, like double accrual accounting and keeping 2 sets of books and being sneaky and having the budgeted amount in the public and the non-budgeted amount over here working on the other side. No, we're not doing any of that. It's all just, there you are. And so our banking system is very clean. It's very simple. It's very user friendly. There are no SWIFT system transfer bottlenecks in it. And we're not trying to cheat any of the currency speculators either. I mean,
Nope.
and we're not trying to cheat any disaster victims. We're not trying to give people a $5,000 payment and then say, oh, well, that was settlement of the whole debt. No, we're not doing any of that kind of crapola. And I think that because we're not, and because we really are here in a spirit of love and service, that the entire rest of the world, individual people, even people that are working for these corporations, realize that they and their families are living people, and they're going to take it in the shorts from these corporations too.
Yeah.
So there's a giant pushback in the world where the living have suddenly awakened and gone, And of all the things that I've struggled over, it's been trying to explain the concept of persons and personage and differing jurisdictions with differing sets of law to people. I think I came up with the best one that I had ever, the best analogy I ever had. And it was all due to my cat.
What's the cat one? I don't think I know. I was going to say to you that there are people that are confused with the lawful person, and I was going to draw it out so you could just tell me if I'm right about this or not, because I want to make sure that I'm not wrong.
Well, let me give you my most successful analogy yet. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a cat. Okay, he's a furry cat. He's a real cat. He breathes. He meows. He purrs. He scratches. He does all the things cats do. It is an actual factual cat. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You decide to name your cat Felix. Well, you attach the name Felix to your cat. There's nothing that says Felix on his forehead. This is a name, but it's not Felix. It's a name that represents Felix, right? All right. Well, then, how about this? You make a painting of Felix. It's a good likeness. It's a representation of Felix, but it's not Felix. So you make a photo of Felix. And again, it's a very precise representation of Felix. Looks just like him, but it's not Felix.
It doesn't meow, it doesn't purr, it doesn't scratch.
You make a charcoal drawing of Felix, and again, hey, it's a good representation of what he looks like, but it's not Felix. All these different things, all these different representations, the name, the painting, the photo, the video, the pastel, the charcoal drawing are all different representations of the living cat, and none of them are the cat, right? These are all different persons.
Does it look like this?
Yeah, different kinds. Yeah, the living cat is the people. That was small p. The name Felix would be his lawful name, right?
Yep.
And that would also serve as the first legal name, so that the land sea thing goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have the all capital letters name would be another iteration in the air jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all representations of Felix, but none of them are Felix.
And this is the veil.
The corporate veil comes right down through the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So this is the lawful side and this is the legal side. I just want to make sure. So people think that when you say lawful person, that there isn't one here, and there is one here, and then it goes here to the legal persons.
Right.
And this is the corporate veil.
Right. Exactly.
So we have the small p people, the capital P people, and then we have a lawful person that we can do business with. And
Right.
then when you cross the corporate veil, it all becomes incorporated over here, friends. And so then this can become like federal, and then British territorial, then Papist municipal, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, see,
Or whatever, more different ends legises over here. Like, I don't know.
on our side of the corporate veil, we're all people.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of the corporate veil, it's all persons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So that's the difference in terms of the terminology. But the important thing for people to understand is that these are all different representations
Mm-hmm.
Right.
of an actual substantial being. This is our substance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the rest of these things are representations.
Right.
The name is a representation. The painting is a representation. The video is a representation. The photo is a representation. All these different things, all these different persons, these different representations of you are not you any more than all of those things are the cat, right?
Yeah.
So if we can tell the difference between a cat and a photo of a cat, we should be able to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's a good analogy.
Well, okay. So next week, let's talk a little bit more about the lawful person, because that part is really, really messing people up. And they're just like, no, there's a lot happening. So we'll just dive into that a little bit, maybe.
All right.
Well, you were talking about the 6 billion people, 8 billion people, or whatever, and all of this, but I think that that everybody is gravitating to it because it's maybe one word or two words: freedom, relief. We've been bombarded from every direction, literally, for so long as people around the globe, that everybody is seeking that relief, and they're vibrating to it. So it's a wonderful thing, and you got to hit critical mass. Once the critical mass hits, it's going to go exponential.
Yep. All of a sudden, we'll have lots of blue dot banks, and there will be very few red dot banks.
Yep. Yeah. It'll be that X cross. The blue dots will be growing, and the reds will be shrinking. So hopefully that's one of your important deals.
Well, guys, I'm off and running again.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Niti, you're muted, Niti.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say we'll see you next week.
All right, dear. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciated the help.